Alyssa, can you formally introduce yourself and the role that you play with HCP?
Sure. I'm Alyssa Lovelace. I'm the Director for Public Policy at HCP. HCP is the New York State Association of Healthcare Providers, and we're a trade association that represents primarily licensed home care agencies throughout the state of New York. My role here as Director for Public Policy is to ensure our legislative and regulatory agendas are heard throughout the state, including throughout the legislative session and year-round. We have a public policy team of 3 here, and primarily there's bill tracking involved as it relates to legislation, writing new laws that we could potentially see passed, and direct lobbying activities.
Great, thank you. So today I've asked you to speak with us about this thing called EVV. Can we start first by sort of explaining that acronym? And more importantly, what does it mean for LHCSA providers?
EVV is electronic visit verification. This is a provision within the federal 21st Century Cures Act that President Obama signed into law prior to leaving office. As it relates to home care, this will go into effect January 1st, 2019 for personal care services and January 1st, 2023 for home health care services. And what it would do is help eliminate fraud and abuse within the healthcare and home care industries. It assists with billing, compliance, and quality assurance initiatives within the agency itself. And it also assists the providers with consumer record checks.
Alyssa, can you tell me who does EVV apply to in your state?
Sure. EVV applies to all Medicaid reimbursed home care providers, and the consumer is a direct Medicaid recipient.
And I understand there's various types of EVV models out there. Can you explain some of the models? And as a follow-up to that question, can you tell me which model your state has chosen?
There are essentially 2 separate models. There's an open and a closed model. The open model, which is what New York State has, is a provider choice model. And so the state requires the provider community to select, implement, and pay for the EVV of their choice. So New York is essentially a provider choice model. There's also a managed care organization choice model, and that would require the MCO to select, implement, and pay for the EVV vendor of their choice. The state choice model is when the state Medicaid program contracts with a single EVV vendor, and they are then the providers are then responsible to use that specific EVV vendor, and the state would directly oversee. So that could potentially be burdensome for the providers, particularly in New York State.
And so given that New York has gone the provider model, that means, just to be clear, a provider can choose their own EVV system to implement, correct?
Correct.
Right. Another question that I'm curious to hear your opinion on is, as a provider, can I access the data that's collected from the VO?
Sure. Those who can access the data are essentially agents of the VO or subcontractors, as well as DOH and the Medicaid Inspector General. So again, that would help assist with the elimination of fraud and abuse.
Great. My last question is, as a LHCSA, if I'm looking for more information on EVV, where would you recommend that we look?
I would recommend at this time the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services website, CMS. They have some great presentations and information on there, as well as the Department of Health and Human Services. CMS is also expected to release guidance to state Medicaid directors by the end of this month.